so much, Kay. And I really want to thank Tulane University for having the foresight to put on such a colloquium. This is really something we've needed in our community for the folks who are trying to integrate Open Simulator into other applications. So I'm really happy to be here. I'm sorry I didn't make the speakeasy, so I did not have time to share text. But most of you all know me in a variety of virtual worlds across different grids as Delightful Duwangle. I was so pleased to have the opportunity to do my dissertation research on how groups collaborate using virtual worlds. Back in 2013 is when that was published. But at the University of Central Florida, I am very familiar with mainstreaming distributed learning. That was an institution that had 22,000 students when I got there in 1992, and then today it has 66,000 students, one of the largest state universities in the country. I found myself right in the middle of that activity, being requested to build online programs that included faculty development, researching tools, finding evidence for accreditation, and really trying to help disseminate effective practices across the campus. So when we look at virtual world learning, this is something that I have been really trying to find the ways to make the institution think about how to integrate strategically these activities, not only for teaching and learning, but also research. UCF is trying to become a premier research university, so I'm actually going to talk a little bit more how I'm going to get at the teaching and learning effectiveness from a research standpoint. So, ultimately, my research has surrounded collaborative virtual environments, and that has included on the personal individual level for faculty and also for departments and the enterprise. And what makes it so exciting for me is that it's interesting for being a true global platform. You know, we have tried to use learning management systems to create communities of practice, and it simply just has not worked very well. It may work for a time, but it really isn't, in my experience, anything like what I have been able to experience learning from people around the world, like I have from many of you. So this slide illustrates some of the different grids, some of the different tools that the Air Force, Dr. Andrew Stricker, has enabled me to participate in learning about, and then also what some of the military activities have been done that I've been able to be involved in. At the University of Central Florida, we are considered the National Center for Simulation. So being involved in military training is something that our institution does across services. I was really hoping that the Army's Moses project would be the project that would enable the platform to become secure and become customizable enough for enterprise use. Unfortunately, that did not happen, and the Army has taken different directions in terms of its virtual learning applications. But I've also been able to work with the Air Force and then now working with the Navy as well. But why do we need this kind of mainstreaming support? Take a look at this arrangement of all these different tools that make up an ecosystem. These are the kinds of tools that faculty have to figure out which to use to help with their teaching effectiveness. It's also what departments have to figure out what can be used, and it's also what the institution has to figure out how to adopt. So there's a lot of opportunity for collaboration across institutions in higher ed and in secondary institutions to flatten this learning curve, to stay ahead of the complexity that is moving faster than many of us can keep up with. And as I think about this particular slide, this just represents higher education. You can get a copy of the slide on the link on the bottom. But the same kinds of evaluation of tools and applications are happening for the government, and they're happening for the military, they're happening for industry. So how can we get at some of that learning so that we can accelerate and incubate our own professional development so that we can benefit our students? For me, this has been personal. And many of you know that I have used these worlds with my family. I have enjoyed seeing first up close how this helps and how other tools have come in and kind of wrecked my thinking, like Minecraft, Fortnite, some of these other games that are really pulling my family into these other directions. And so I think about how can we help build the platform to put in some of the interactions that we would like to see happen. One of the things that I tell other faculty members and other leaders is that this platform offers the best opportunity for being able to learn vicariously about other platforms, because I don't think there's any other effective platform like this that can really help illustrate what people are doing and finding value with different tools. So for example, I met Rachel, our first speaker. I met her in a virtual world after asking a question on a listserv about putting some team training online for patient safety. And she and she introduced me to a network of others. We were able to collaborate across distance and across platforms. And we actually use multiple platforms to get at the kind of different applications we were looking for. And we wrote about these, and we made a presentation. I actually got to meet her at the Institute of Medicine in Washington, D.C. And then since trying to keep up with her has been a really nice challenge. I'm very happy with how she's at the University of Washington now. But beyond just personally learning from everyone and trying to figure out how to imagine the applications, I have been able to participate recently in some National Science Foundation initiatives. So this particular slide shows a virtual world conference that was held in the state of Florida last year. I would love to have been able to say it was at the University of Central Florida, but it was not. It was at the Florida Institute of Technology in Melbourne. Kurt Winkleman is the faculty member who's a chemistry professor, and many of you may have seen him in Second Life. But he has been able, through STEM education grants, through NSF, to be able to continue to explore the faculty development options. So the picture of all of these people was actually taken just last month in November in Florida. And I am very hopeful that some of these faculty in that picture are going to be people we are going to see participate in environments like this for sharing research on what they are studying that gets at the kind of teaching effectiveness they're looking for undergraduate STEM education. Now, the bottom picture is actually from last year. Myself, Dr. Larry Reagan in the middle, and Joyce Betancourt are in that picture. So last year, I was able to actually meet Joyce face-to-face for the first time when we were attending this Virtual Worlds Conference at Penn State. So we can joke and say that we've been to college together, so we stayed in the dorms. But what is significant and why I wanted to add that picture is because at that particular meeting, I reconnected with my colleague, Larry Reagan at Penn State. Larry Reagan and I had previously put on a leadership institute for EDUCAUSE, a National Information Technology Association. For the topic of the Leadership Institute was for instructional design and learning technologies. That was back in 2005 to 2007. There were a lot of faculty members and staff members from across institutions that participated in those leadership institutes for EDUCAUSE. But Larry went on and created a leadership institute for the Sloan Consortium, now called the Online Learning Consortium. He has just retired, but since meeting at this workshop, he is now facilitating this NSF community, which may become a new community similar to the cyber learning community in the National Science Foundation. So I'm encouraged that there will be more connections across different components of the National Science Foundation, so that you not only have undergraduate STEM education, but you also have computer science, like Krista, how she has worked on getting grants for some of the programs and some of the platforms. So I still have hope that we're going to be able to make these connections, these human connections that bridge the scholarship, they bridge the disciplines, and they get at the kind of intellectual merit and broader impact that the National Science Foundation is looking for. There is an initiative called Icicle in IEEE right now that is working on creating the standards of interoperability between the virtual reality, augmented reality, mixed reality, and now sometimes referred to as cross reality or extended reality, so that it will inform the creation of a new discipline, learning engineering. We all might be pioneers in the development of that new discipline. And the more we can collaborate and build upon each other's work, sing from the common literature, have similar measures, compare through meta-analysis our outcomes, then the farther we are going to get to be able to be taking very seriously, not only for research, but for the scholarship of teaching and learning. This slide also shows the Advanced Distributed Learning Collaboratory and the IMS Global Learning Consortium. These are two groups that I see where we will be able to connect at some point. It doesn't have to be across everything, but just one point where we connect to an initiative that they're doing where it makes sense to add the platform Open Simulator into the strategic applications of an enterprise or across an enterprise. Now for me, I see myself kind of going beyond the campus, beyond into the community and across institutions. So I've had the opportunity to work a little bit on the Internet of Things research with the Department of Defense. and I'm really interested in how to connect the activities in the physical world and have that data illustrated into the virtual world. So this would go back to how those standards are developed and how we can have the data interoperability that we need. So those images, many of you participated in the Federal Consortium of Virtual Worlds workshop that was held in 2015. This was the mega city region that was created for that event, and really that was the first time that I had ever really had a chance to think about all of the different aspects, all the different disciplines, all the different types of collaboration that's needed in a city to make it into a smart city or smart community, and then of course how to make it an enabled community so that it's inclusive and it has participation from all the stakeholders that you would like to see happen. The ITSEC conference, I have the 27 picture on there on that slide, but I just this week attended the 2018 ITSEC conference. It's actually the world's largest modeling and simulation conference in the world, and it's held in Orlando every year. And at that conference this year, we saw virtual reality everywhere. We started seeing mixed reality on the show floor, and then some extended reality. So I'm hopeful that there will be more military studies of training effectiveness that can be translated into learning effectiveness that will apply to our institutions. But for us, I see we have a lot of work to do. And I have a whole region that I created as a playground based on a Godzilla theme. I went through and found all these Creative Commons licensed Godzilla pictures and made several comments that go with the pictures. But these all kind of illustrate some of the work that we need to be able to figure out if we're going to make our ecosystem really as rich as possible for growing. So sharing the toys means we have to solve the intellectual property concerns. This is a big issue in the team science community, where there must be some sort of understanding of how to allocate credit, so that Eileen mentioned how she's trying to stay under the radar for getting tenure. Well, if we can make it easier to get tenure because now we have more evidence of your contributions, then this will help. And so to do that, we have to get analytics. To do that, we have to really figure out how to integrate the data points in the code that we need to be able to show what the learners are doing and why, we can then think about why they're doing that. How does that meet their needs for what they're doing? And of course, we want to get the return on investment so that we can make the case for how this is essential to incorporate into our organizations. And data science is a new emerging field. I'm really hopeful that with the Penn State connection, they have a information science program. University of Central Florida does not. So when I speak to my librarians at UCF, there's really no teaching and learning going on about information science. There are some new data science programs being developed at the graduate level, and this has been, this is going to connect very closely in Orlando with smart city development. But Penn State has a very strong information science program. So with their connections with the National Science Foundation, I would hope that there are connections back to the Library Professional Association so that people like Val can get involved in that effort and then help us not only catalog what's going on in the virtual world, who's doing what, where, when, why, but also how to help us create the kinds of taxonomies, ontologies, the keywords to be able to quantify the value of what is happening in these worlds for our learners, including us. And then, of course, training. Training is, you know, in the government and in the military, there has been more of a shift towards recognizing the value of the person, value of the learner characteristics. But in education, training is still kind of looked at like, well, you know, we do something more significant. We do education. But really, if we're looking at how to improve performance, then really it goes across. And that's why integrating the education and training for performance is ideal. Now, of course, when we get those kinds of reports for our administrators of what is happening and how great things are going, that will improve adoption. Hopefully the adoption will be easier to engage. But there is a wild card that I see coming that we're all going to be dealing with, and that's the artificial intelligence that will be introduced across all of our information systems and learning systems. And so how our community figures out how to use artificial intelligence in a way that enhances our humanity, this is a legacy that we have the option to define, in my view. So beyond that little message that I wanted to share, I want to encourage you to get ready for my mentors, Cynthia Colloquium and Dr. Andy Stricker, who are going to be sharing some of the research that we have been doing with their efforts from the Mars expedition. They were the federal virtual world winners that the Army hosted in 2010. They won the $25,000 first prize place for that effort. That was in Second Life. And now they have managed to get it into Open Simulator. And we have the opportunity to shape it and test it and find out how we can connect it to actual science. So I am really thankful for the opportunities that I have had with these mentors. I can't express enough thanks for how everyone has helped me in my position at the university and helped me think much bigger, much more beyond into the art of the possible